I should say from the outset that Liberty, the National Council for Civil Liberties, is a cross-party, non-party organisation, and that's my role as well. But what we do attempt to do is to engage with people of all democratic people, slightly to the left of politics, slightly to the right of politics, to remind them of the importance of hard-won freedom. We meet on the day of the last Queen's speech before a general election. The new Labour government has probably been the most authoritarian government of my lifetime. And let's be clear, Britain is not Burma, and Britain is North Korea, and Britain is not a police state. We're very, very fortunate to live in perhaps the oldest unbroken democracy on earth. If the last decade or so tell us anything, it's about the ease with which people will trade away their rights and freedoms if they think it won't affect them. In the name of fighting all sorts of things that we should fight, like terrorism and crime and disorder and drug taking and all sorts of things that are social evils, in the name of fighting those perfectly legitimate evils, we will give up rights and freedoms. We generally do it because we don't think it will affect people like us. Point about citizens' rights versus human rights. There is no fundamental human right to live in any particular country. There is nothing completely anathema to human rights about having nation states and borders and border control and so on. But if you say that bills of rights and human rights should only apply to citizens of a particular country, that's a very, very dangerous road to go down. Let me give you an example. Looking back now, as we can, I hope, on the War on Terror, looking back on the mistakes that were counterproductive to anybody's national security and certainly to any international democratic struggle against terrorism. Looking at those mistakes, looking at Guantanamo Bay, looking at Abu Ghraib, looking at extraordinary rendition, how was it possible that another great democracy like the United States would sanction some of those policies? I'll tell you why it was possible. It was possible because some clever White House lawyer told the former president that these things were permissible because those people were not Americans. And any nation state is capable of making that mistake. And most of the worst excesses of the War on Terror would never have happened if the people that promoted them and the people that supported them thought they could apply to them. This is the way that fundamental values are compromised, not for malicious reasons, but casually and carelessly, because nobody ever thought it would affect them. Collect the evidence, bring them to trial at the Old Bailey, and convict them. And when they do, there is no outrage from Liberty or community groups or anybody else, because justice has been done and been seen to be done. Nobody's asking for special treatment, just equal treatment. I do think that many misunderstand the Human Rights Act. And if it is to be scrapped, and if it is to be replaced, we need to understand what it is we have to lose. Human rights is difficult territory, and they will at times protect people who irritate and offend us. But they weren't designed to make us comfortable. They were designed to keep us free. If you actually create a permanent emergency, as opposed to a day-to-day existence full of compromises and trade-offs that we all live in, whatever walk of life. If you say the rules of the game have changed, it's all completely different now, the war on terror goes on forever, you effectively abandon your democratic framework. And I think that's incredibly dangerous indeed, and it means that you have completely, what is your framework of values? What is your template for attempting to negotiate difficult issues? It's all gone, and that's what I think is most dangerous of all. Leadership is actually about keeping calm in those situations. That's the real test. The reason why we have all these bad laws and they've been building up over decades is because whenever something really awful happens in a modern media age, in an open democracy, we the people rise up and say, Prime Minister, Home Secretary, what are you going to do to make sure this never ever happens again? No more bombs, no more murders, no more anything ever again. What are you going to do? And what we all need, doesn't matter what party it is, what we need is leadership that says, well, I cannot deliver that. There is no magic answer, there is no risk-free society. What I can tell you is what is possible, as was said, the art of the possible. What I can tell you is what we have been doing, what we'll continue to do, rather than let me bring out a new piece of legislation that will achieve nothing, but will take a lot of rights and freedoms away, and one day will be used to, you know, throw an octogenarian peace protester out of the Labour Party conference, or will be used to criminalise a woman who read the names of dead soldiers and dead Iraqis out of the cenotaph without prior permission. All these ridiculous cases of abuse that didn't need to happen. It was just all this rushed legislation, which was really just spin. There are all sorts of ways in which the American mistakes of the war on terror arguably exceeded anything that happened here. But on the other side of the balance sheet, even President Bush, even the day after 9/11, was not got away with saying the rules of the game have changed, and saying we rip up the US Bill of Rights because we now need to start from scratch. Whereas it's been incredibly fashionable for a lot of years now. You know, John Reed did it, various Labour politicians have done it, for saying, scrap the Human Rights Act, scrap human rights, let's just start again. And so it's complicated. There are things to learn and things to worry about in both cultures. And I don't think I can sort of say fairer than that. But as I say, ultimately I feel positive, because I do think that the test, what makes these democracies, is that when bad things happen, there is accountability. When we discover that people were tortured in freedom's name, we get cross about it, and there will be a reckoning. There will. And, President Obama's got a long road ahead of him, and perhaps he got his Nobel Prize prematurely, but the fact that a great old democracy was capable of electing someone called Barack Hussein Obama just after, it's cause for hope. I'm not making a political point, I'm just making a cultural point. And equally, I feel incredibly optimistic, speaking to audiences around the country, that Britain is a lot less complacent about its rights and freedoms in 2009 than it was in 1999.